The pale pre-dawn light had just begun to bleed across the horizon of the South China Sea, painting the scattered clouds in hues of violet and rose. Below the Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit bomber, call sign Spectre 1, was a phantom in the sky, a mere ghost of graphite and composite materials gliding silently through the upper atmosphere. At 50,000 feet, its two-person crew, Major David Ghost Riley and his co-pilot, Captain Eva Valkyrie Rostova, were nearing the critical phase of their mission. They were a disembodied presence, a whisper of American power deep within a heavily contested anti-access area denial, or A2/AD zone. Their task was one of strategic reconnaissance, a high-stakes flight to map the latest deployments of China's advanced surface-to-air missile systems, specifically the new generation of HQ-series interceptors that were designed to threaten even the most sophisticated stealth aircraft. The B-2, with its flying wing design and radar-absorbent skin, was the only aircraft for the job, a silver bullet in the Pentagon's arsenal. But even silver bullets can be tracked if the enemy is sharp enough and lucky enough. The first indication of trouble was a faint, almost imperceptible flicker on Valkyrie's electronic warfare suite. It wasn't the hard lock of a targeting radar, something the B-2's systems were designed to detect and jam almost instantaneously. This was something different, a passive signal that was both fleeting and persistent. "Ghost, I've got a whisper," she said, her voice calm but laced with an undercurrent of tension. "High band, multispectrum. They're not painting us, but they're listening." Riley's eyes, already scanning the myriad of displays before him, narrowed. The mission parameters were clear. If detected, they were to abort and egress immediately. But this wasn't a clear detection. It was a ghost in the machine, a digital shadow that hinted at a presence they couldn't yet see. On the ground, hundreds of miles away, in a darkened, subterranean bunker in a remote part of China's Fujian province, a People's Liberation Army Rocket Force colonel stared intently at his screen. His unit was equipped with a new experimental quantum radar system, a technology that was still in its infancy and considered by many in the West to be more theoretical than practical. It didn't rely on sending out a powerful radar wave to bounce off a target, but instead used entangled subatomic particles to detect disturbances in the quantum field. It was a system designed to find the unfindable, to see the invisible, and for a fleeting moment it had registered a disturbance, an anomaly at high altitude moving at a high subsonic speed. That could only be one thing: an American stealth bomber. The colonel made a decision that would have monumental, albeit short-lived consequences. He didn't have a solid lock, not in the traditional sense, but he had a trajectory. He gave the order to fire. From its concealed launch silo, a massive HQ-19 missile, a weapon designed to intercept ballistic missiles and high-flying aircraft, roared to life. It clawed its way into the thin morning air, a fiery exclamation point against the dawn. In the cockpit of Spectre 1, all hell broke loose. The passive whisper became a deafening scream as the B-2's systems detected the missile launch. "Missile launch! Missile launch! 9 o'clock high!" Valkyrie's voice was sharp, professional, cutting through the sudden blare of alarms. Ghost's hands were already moving, pushing the throttles forward and banking the graceful flying wing into a steep, gut-wrenching dive. The B-2, for all its technological prowess, was not a fighter jet. It couldn't outrun a missile designed to kill satellites. Its survival depended on its stealth, and that stealth had been compromised. But the crew of Spectre 1 were not the only ones who knew of the launch. The moment the HQ-19 ignited its rocket motor, its intense heat signature and the electronic chatter of its launch sequence were detected by a constellation of American assets. A Defense Support Program satellite hanging in geostationary orbit 22,000 miles above the Earth saw the bloom of the launch in infrared. A nearby RC-135 rivet joint electronic intelligence aircraft, loitering safely in international airspace, intercepted the launch commands. The data from these and a dozen other sensors was instantly fused and relayed through a secure network to Strategic Command in Nebraska. The entire process took less than a second. The information was clear and unambiguous. A Chinese missile base had just fired on a United States strategic asset. This was not a warning shot. It was an act of war. The response was not a matter of deliberation, it was a matter of doctrine. For years, the United States had developed a counter A2/AD strategy built on the principle of overwhelming and instantaneous retaliation. The moment a high-value asset like a B-2 was fired upon, a pre-planned and automated response was set in motion. There was no time for a phone call to the president. The logic was cold and brutal. Any adversary capable of threatening a stealth bomber had to have their offensive capability neutralized before it could be used again. In the command center, the system flagged the launch site, cross-referencing its location with pre-existing intelligence. The Fujian base was not just a missile battery, it was a key node in China's coastal defense network. The system presented a series of response options, and the highest-rated one was already in motion. Deep beneath the waves of the Pacific Ocean, the USS Ohio, a guided missile submarine, received a highly encrypted data burst. The submarine, a former ballistic missile sub converted to carry over 150 Tomahawk cruise missiles, didn't need a human to interpret the command. The fire control system processed the targeting data, and within seconds, 4 of its vertical launch tubes were pressurized. With a soft whoosh of compressed air, 4 Tomahawk cruise missiles were ejected from the submarine, their rocket motors igniting as they broke the surface of the water. They climbed to altitude, their turbofan engines taking over as they settled in for a low-altitude, terrain-hugging flight to their target. At the same time, another asset was brought to bear. An F-35 Lightning II, flying a combat air patrol from Kadena Air Base in Japan, also received the targeting information. The pilot, his own systems already networked into the same battlespace picture as the submarine and the B-2, was given a simple command: prosecute. The F-35, itself a stealth aircraft, pushed into a shallow dive, accelerating through the sound barrier. From its internal weapons bay, it released 2 GBU-53/B Stormbreaker smart bombs. These were not large weapons, but they were incredibly sophisticated, equipped with a tri-mode seeker that could track a target by millimeter-wave radar, infrared, and semi-active laser. Back in the skies over the South China Sea, Ghost and Valkyrie were fighting for their lives. The HQ-19 was closing at a terrifying velocity. The B-2 deployed a cloud of advanced decoys and jammers, creating a phantom of electronic noise to confuse the incoming missile seeker. For a heart-stopping moment, the missile appeared to waver in its trajectory. But it was a sophisticated weapon, and its onboard processors filtered out the noise, reacquiring the massive, albeit stealthy, form of the bomber. The missile's proximity fuse was just about to detonate its fragmentation warhead when its life ended. Unseen and unheard, a silent actor had entered the fray. High above in the near vacuum of space, an experimental space-based laser, part of a clandestine American strategic defense initiative, had been tracking the entire engagement. With the launch of the HQ-19, it too had been given the green light. A beam of pure energy, invisible to the naked eye, lanced down from the heavens and struck the missile. The laser's intense heat instantly cooked the missile's delicate electronics and detonated its warhead prematurely. The sky lit up with a brilliant, silent flash. A new star that bloomed and then faded just as quickly. Spectre 1, battered by the shockwave but intact, leveled out. For the Chinese colonel in his bunker, the world was a confusion of contradictory data. First, the triumphant confirmation of a successful lock, then the launch, and then nothing. The telemetry from the HQ-19 had simply vanished. He was about to order another launch when his entire world was erased. The first Tomahawk cruise missile, having flown for hundreds of miles just feet above the waves to avoid radar detection, slammed into the base's command and control center. A fraction of a second later, the other 3 Tomahawks struck the missile silos and the quantum radar array. Almost simultaneously, the 2 Stormbreaker bombs, having been guided by the F-35 from over 100 miles away, arrived. Their small but powerful warheads were designed to penetrate hardened structures, and they tore through the reinforced concrete of the underground facilities before detonating. The result was a catastrophic, synchronized annihilation. The entire missile base, from its command bunker to its launch pads, was vaporized in a series of earth-shattering explosions. From the first flicker on Valkyrie's screen to the complete destruction of the Chinese base, less than 2 minutes had elapsed. In the silent aftermath, Spectre 1, its mission of reconnaissance now rendered moot by the violent eruption of a conflict it had inadvertently triggered, turned its graceful dark wings towards home, leaving behind a rising sun that was now reflecting off a new, smoldering crater on the coast of mainland China. The dawn had come, and with it a new and terrifying chapter in the history of warfare.